On Remembrance Sunday at the Holy Innocents Zoom family service, we remembered those who had given their lives in past wars. At the end of the service, some of us who were old enough to have lived through the Second World War were invited to talk to the whole group about their personal experience and memories of that time. This generated a considerable interest, and I've been asked to repeat and record what I said for the benefit of those who missed it. Although I had a few notes to guide me, I didn't work from or talk from a prepared script, so this may not exactly match what I said then, but hopefully will be fairly close to it. So here goes. The outbreak of the war, of course, was 81 years ago, 1939, when I was just 6.5 years of age. So, of course, I'm being asked to remember over 81 years my childhood, which is a bit of a tall order. And I hope it will be accurate rather than imagined, all of it. As a child, of course, the seriousness of war doesn't sort of hit you, and for us as young children, it was almost like an adventure. We didn't realise quite what was going on. At that time, I was living in Lewisham with my mum and dad and my two older sisters. The older one, Greta, she was just turned 14 at that time, and so, as was the practice then, she'd already left school, was at work, no longer considered a child, even though only 14. The younger of my two sisters, Stella, she was 2 years older than me, so we were young enough to be included in the evacuation process. My very first memories were a day or two before war broke out, when we were all marched down to Lewisham Library to be fitted out with our gas masks. The masks then, not like our coronaviruses today, but the rather clumsy thing, which I'm sure you've all seen pictures of, with the big filter in the front of it, big rubber mask that went right over the whole of the face. And these were packed then in little cardboard boxes with a string through the box that you could then hang the thing around your neck. So whenever you went out, you could carry the gas mask with you, wrapped around your neck. My next memory is, I think it was probably just a day or two after war broke out, when the evacuation process occurred. The war cabinet at that time decided that it wasn't safe for the children to be in London because there was the risk of attack. And so a very quick but very intricate logistical exercise had to be set up to get all the children out of London. St Saviour's School at Lewisham, which my sister and I went to, we were all taken up. I remember my mother taking us on the tram early one morning from Lewisham up to the Good Shepherd School at Downham, where we met up with other children of our group, of our class, our own school, and children from other schools. Great gathering there. And from there we walked down to Grove Park Station, where we were all boarded. The children were all boarded onto trains, having to say goodbye to their mums and dads in some cases. And off we went to an unknown destination. We didn't know where we were going, and nor did our parents know where we were being taken to. And I can only sort of think now, when I think back, how difficult that must have been for the parents to see their quite young children just going off, not knowing where they were going to. And I'm sure that after the train had pulled away, the mums must have all clung to each other, hugging and being very tearful. We were taken to Burgess Hill in Sussex, and my sister and I, together with two of my girl cousins and another girl from St Saviour's School, the five of us were billeted with a family in Burgess Hill, and we were very well looked after there by the family, made to feel at home. And then, because in those early months of the war, not too much was happening on the home front. The fighting was all across on the continent, and so everything seemed to be quiet. And the need for evacuation, people started to wonder. And although what it seemed as though we were at Burgess Hill for a long time, it probably was only a few months when we then came back home to Lewisham. And then, of course, not long after that, the Blitz started and the air raid started. So once again, another evacuation process was set up. And this time, Stella and I were taken down to Reading with our school. And there we were placed with a family who just didn't want us there. And we were quite badly treated, badly cared for, imposed upon. At that time, I suffered quite badly with my nerves. The doctor had already given me a bottle of tonic, as was the arrangement at that time of day with medicine. Everything came in a bottle. But because of my nerves, I just couldn't hold this bottle straight. And when I picked it up, my hand shook. And I also, at that time, had a very bad stammer, very bad stutter, which over the years, I think I've managed to gradually master. I still have it a little bit. But the lady of the house, Mrs. Dixon, thought that she could cure me of both the nerves and the stammer by caning me. And of course, that only had the opposite effect, just made me that much worse. And we were very unhappy there. And in letters home to my mum, we made it clear that we weren't happy there. And so she decided that she would come down to Reading herself, find a little room somewhere in a house where the three of us could be together. And that's what she did. And I can remember the parting words from Mrs. Dixon, with whom we'd been lodging, who said to my sister and myself, "If ever I meet you two kids in the street after all this, I won't even bother to say hello to you." What a cruel thing to say to what a 7-year-old I was at that time, and my sister 9. What had we done? So there we were. We stayed then with our mum in a room in Reading for a while, and again things quietened down. Back we came to London. This must have been about 1941 by this time, I think. And then the Blitz started, the air raids over London, and it started to get quite bad. No, so I've got that wrong. The Blitz was before this. When we came back, so the Doodlebugs then started, the V1s, the unmanned aeroplanes coming over from the continent. They were loaded up with just sufficient fuel to get them as far as London and some of the other big cities. Then when the fuel ran out, the planes would just crash to the ground, causing great damage. We lived through all this, and of course there were the air raids going on over London, and we had 3 options for shelter. There were the public shelters, which were built in a number of places. At the bottom of our road, there was an underground shelter. A lot of people had the Anderson shelters in their garden, which were like dugouts in the garden covered with corrugated iron sheeting, where people would go down there at night into quite damp conditions to sleep. In our house, we had the Morrison Shelter, which was like a large metal table, probably about 6 foot by 6 foot, with a steel top to it. And the idea being that if a bomb hit your house or nearby and the house tumbled down, by being underneath this steel plate, you would be protected from the falling brickwork, and hopefully would survive. So that was really what the way our last year, the last years of the war, we spent in the thick of it in London. It's surprising to think that just how much freedom we as children were given. I can remember, I was probably about 9 or 10 by this time, being quite free to go off on my bicycle, riding around Lewisham. If an air raid started, I'd cycle my way back home. But there were no phones and things at that time in houses, or mobile phones. Nobody knew where you were. You were just given the freedom to go out and about. So we spent night times in the public shelter at the bottom of the road, And these shelters were arranged in bays, probably with about 20 bunks in each bay, where the local people would all go down there at night, men, women, children, all mixed up together in the bays. And it would jokingly be said by the men that they'd slept with all the women in the street, which was true. They'd slept with them. After the war, of course, when things had quietened, the war had finished, there were all these bomb sites around London where we as kids would explore, going scrumping, picking fruit from the trees in these abandoned gardens, sometimes getting in and out of the houses if they weren't locked to see what we could find. So for us as kids, it was really something of a great adventure. We didn't really realise the seriousness of it. Possibly, I don't know whether the young children today altogether realise the seriousness of the coronavirus. So there we are. I think that's about it. The talk afterwards, after the prayer meeting on Sunday, went on for quite a while with people asking questions, and then in the breakout rooms afterwards, there was quite a bit more discussion. I think that's about it. Thank you.